These 4 horrible, radical left Democrat investigations of your all-time favorite president, me, is just a continuation of the most disgusting witch hunt in the history of our country. It's gone on forever with Russia, 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 and Ukraine, 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 and the Mueller hoax. It's an absolute disgrace what's going on. They even spied on my campaign. And remember this, with all of the work that they did on Mueller, no collusion. That's what the answer was all no collusion. Whether it's the Mar-a-Lago raid or the Unselect Committee hoax, the perfect Georgia phone call, it was absolutely perfect, or the Stormy Horseface Daniels extortion plot, they're all sick, and it's fake news. Our enemies are desperate to stop us because they know that we are the only ones who can stop them, and they know it very strongly. And they're looking at the polls where, not me, but we are up by so much. They can't even believe it. We won twice, and now we've got to win a third time. They know that we can defeat them. They know that we will defeat them. But they're not coming after me. They're coming after you. I'm just standing in their way. And I always will stand in their way. Thank you very much.
If you were wondering how Donald Trump is coping with the news that his house of cards is about to come crashing down, this clip is a pretty good indication, where he literally does us the favor of listing all of the major crimes for which he's being investigated. With his indictment in Manhattan imminent, not to mention the news from last week that several Fulton County grand jury members were coming away from their experience with increased respect for election workers, which doesn't exactly bode well for Trump, he's very clearly feeling the pressure from all sides. And what does Donald Trump do when he feels backed into a corner? The same thing he always does: deny, defend, and project. And here is Exhibit A. I didn't do anything wrong, but if I did do something wrong, then it wasn't my fault, and everything I did was legal, but I was also framed by the radical left who wants to destroy our country. Also Hunter Biden's laptop. And let's be clear, this is typical narcissistic behavior. He is the perpetual victim. How many times have we heard him say, "No politician has ever been treated worse"?
Look at the way I've been treated lately, especially by the media. No politician in history, and I say this with great surety, has been treated worse or more unfairly. You can't let them get you down. You can't let the critics and the naysayers get in the way of your dreams.
The fact is, he has nothing new to say. Just that it's all a witch hunt, the worst our country's ever seen. He just lists off what sounds like the greatest hits of a really bad marketing campaign that only his most dedicated MAGA supporters actually believe. So if Trump wants to keep bringing these grievances up, I'll happily explain why he's wrong. First off, Trump will whine about Russia, 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 no collusion, the Mueller hoax. We all know what happened here. Trump did everything in his power to spin Mueller's report that was the result of a years-long investigation into his involvement in Russia's interference in the 2016 election, including having his Attorney General, Bill Barr, release a summary of the report prior to the full report being released, saying that there was no collusion between Trump and Russia during the 2016 election. Only, small problem, what the report actually said was that yes, there was evidence that he obstructed the investigation, and that after he left office, he could be charged.
Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Under Department of Justice policy, the president could be prosecuted for obstruction of justice crimes after he leaves office, is correct?
True.
Was there sufficient evidence to convict President Trump or anyone else with obstruction of justice?
We did not make that calculation.
How could you not have made the calculation with the regulation?
The OLC opinion, Office of Legal Counsel, indicates that we cannot indict a sitting president. So one of the tools that a prosecutor would use is not there.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
So yeah, not exactly the total exoneration that Trump claimed it was. Beyond that, while Trump pretends that the Russia investigation was a witch hunt, remember, the investigation resulted in 34 indictments, including George Papadopoulos, Paul Manafort, Rick Gates, Mike Flynn, Michael Cohen, all of whom themselves pleaded guilty. Consider too, based on the Russia investigation, we know about a number of instances of cooperation between the Trump campaign and Russia, like how Paul Manafort shared polling data with the Russians, how Mike Flynn told the Russians that Trump was going to lift sanctions that were put in place after their cyber attack on the US election, election, like how Donald Trump himself even went on national television and asked the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton's emails, which they attempted to do that very day. So if the goal here is to say that this impending indictment is a hoax just like the other probes were hoaxes, you might want to avoid mentioning investigations where your own associates literally pleaded guilty. Then there's the Mar-a-Lago raid. Now, first of all, it is not so much a raid as it was the enforcement of a lawful search warrant executed at his Florida resort last summer, which only happened because he avoided the National Archives' requests and subpoenas for over a year before the DOJ had no choice but to actually go in and search his home. But that didn't stop Trump from seizing on the opportunity to play victim, when in reality, he broke the law over and over again, because something law and order. And then we have his perfect phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. He seems to have a lot of those perfect phone calls, doesn't he?
On a perfect phone call, I said, even more perfect than my perfect call to Ukraine. That was a perfect call. This is even more perfect. He made a speech on the perfect phone call I made to the Ukrainian president. It was a perfect call. I had a perfect phone call in Atlanta, Georgia, like so perfect, as good as the perfect phone call I had for the impeachment hoax. Remember that? That was a perfect call, too. But the district attorney, Trump made a phone call because he was challenging the election. So they're after me for a perfect, by the way, perfect phone call. You'd be very proud of me. Just like the call to Ukraine was a perfect call. The one in Atlanta was a perfect call. But we made perhaps an even more perfect call to the Secretary of State of Georgia, which is my right. And in fact, the call was so perfect that the many lawyers, we had like 7 or 8 lawyers on the call on both sides, and other people on the call never expressed even the slightest bit of anger or outrage.
But here's the thing that Trump doesn't seem to understand. Committing a crime and then following up by saying that the crime was perfect doesn't magically make it perfect. Imagine purposefully driving your car into a hotel lobby. Just repeating it was a perfect drive doesn't negate the fact that you just drove your car into a hotel lobby. It just means that you are playing make-believe about your criminality. And then there's the Unselect House Committee, which is a reference to the House Select Committee that investigated the events of January 6th and gave us 10 hearings that made perfectly clear that all of the events from that day happened at the direction and approval of Donald Trump himself. And while I'm not sure that he knew the crowd he incited was going to erect a gallows to hang his vice president, he didn't exactly seem all that bothered by it either. And then the event at the heart of this indictment, the Manhattan District Attorney's case involving Trump's affair with Stormy Daniels and the $130,000 hush money payout made during his 2016 campaign. A crime that was apparently serious enough that it sent his own lawyer, Michael Cohen, to prison. And I'm no legal expert, although I do co-host a legal series on YouTube with one, and that link is right here on the screen. But it would seem to me that if Michael Cohen was prosecuted for those payments, then the guy who directed and benefited from those payments probably has some culpability here. And don't just take it from me. Here's Trump's current lawyer in 2018 arguing on national TV against Trump's current case.
Ukraine, I mean, you know, once that net is out, once the microscope is on you, everything is fair game. And it's hard to argue, oh, you can't look at this or you can't look at that. So yes, if there's an issue with that payment to Stormy Daniels being that it was made on behalf of the candidate, okay, and it was not declared, that's fair game, unfortunately, if that's the case. And, you know, quite frankly, you know, Michael Cohen, again, has made statements that would give rise to suspicion for any prosecutor to say, that doesn't make sense, that a lawyer took out a home equity loan with his own money, paid somebody that he didn't even know on behalf of a client who, by the way, had the wherewithal and the money to afford $130,000, and, by the way, didn't tell the client about the settlement agreement. It's an illegal agreement. It's a fraud. If that's in fact the case.
Turns out that Trump's habit of finding lawyers that he likes on television may not be to his benefit after all. All of which is to say that Donald Trump is becoming more and more unhinged as these indictments bear down on him. He isn't able to offer new defenses of his numerous scandals because there are now too many to count. And so instead, he's just resorted to wheeling off a string of catchphrases that do nothing but remind everyone who he really is. A career criminal and narcissist who will do or say anything to place the blame on anyone other than himself. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.